We're all really just one bad night's sleep away from crumbling into pieces, aren't we? Hello, everybody. I'm Oliver. This is Chaotic Bibliophile, and I apologize if my nose at times sounds a little stuffy. Didn't sleep too well yesterday, and whatever is ever lurking in the British winter crawled into my sinuses, apparently. This is the first video in my new series, let's call it, attempt to do Tuesday reads. So every week I plan to do little wrap ups, little book hauls, little life updates, and I am going to try to not edit them. Yeah, we'll see. For example, right now I really want to have a sip of my tea. Will I edit this? Will I not? Who knows? So let's just start. If you haven't seen my goals video, it will be linked down below and in the eye as always. It sort of explains what's happening here. So let's start with read books. I've been having an astonishingly good start of the year. I think if the year continues like this, just in terms of quality, never mind quantity, it could be potentially my best year ever. All of these books, under any other circumstances, would be potential for best books of the year. Not maybe the single best book of the year, but up top five. But, it's only the 5th of Jan at the time of recording this. So we shall see, is what I'm saying. Okay, so where are these ones? Okay, so first of all, I finished Richard Scott's That Broke into Shining Crystals, which is his second poetry collection. Well, is it his second poetry collection? I just read his previous one. Oh, I did say I was going to hold the mic all the time. Okay. So, um, yeah, this is his poetry collection follow up to Soho, and it's brilliant. Soho is all about gay desire and history and the city, but this one is quite different, I would say. It feels very ancient in some ways because it takes themes from still lives and crystals, and the vocabulary feels so much more, I don't want to say baroque because that's not it, but visually rich and decadent. However, the collection mostly deal with Richard Scott's trauma from being sexually assaulted. And the way he writes about it, it's just a complete gut punch because the first few poems sort of dive into themes of complicated sexuality and complicated queer sexuality and sort of the double-edged sword of wanting to be desired and that intensely, but then also being basically an object of desire to men and the risks of that. But then it becomes more clear and explicitly says that it is about assault. And some of the poems, I just literally had to put the book down and be like, and if that doesn't recommend a poetry collection, then what will? So yeah, it's just so beautiful. Some of my favorites, in case you want to look them up, are Still Life with Rose, Still Life with Lobster, Fruit, and Timepiece. The Still Lives in general, I think, is my favorite section, but from the crystals also, quartz, selenite, magnesite, pink opal, and in between there is a what is the technical? It's not a found poem, but it's like a reclaimed poem, or it's like a quoted poem. Basically, it quotes it quotes that famous poem, his coy mistress, I think, and uses only words from there. And I thought that was a fun experiment. Definitely not the strongest part of the collection, but quite good, quite good. So yeah, really strong start, and already finishing poetry. Then I also finished, and read most of actually, Slow Days, Fast Company, The World, The Flesh, and L.A. by Babitz, with an introduction by Matthew Spector that I thought I would mention just because Matthew Spector did such a good job at summarizing Babitz, and telling me what she was all about. Although I kind of knew, but yeah. As you know, I love John Didion and I love also Pedro Lemebel. In some ways, this actually really reminded me of that. I think more than the style itself, it's sort of the vignettes, they using one's own experiences to do chronicle, like journalism slash art, and how there's like these literary vignettes basically of life. But I think these are so good. She's so smart and funny and glamorous, and it's just the way she writes of plays, which obviously everyone says, but it's true, and also the way she writes about relationships is so good. It's also snappy. I didn't know if this was going to be one continuous narrative or short snaps, and although there are connecting themes, they are mostly standalone pieces. My two favorites, which I did mark, are Heroine and then um, Sirocco. Also, bisexual book, and that is always a nice surprise. So yeah, I highly recommend that. I would be surprised if it's not on my top books of the year next year. Then I finally took this out from the library. My fiance got a library card on my request, but hey, she was really happy to do it. But then I have been the primary user of that library card since she did that. But hey, um, it's good for public libraries that you use them because then they get more funding, and that's what they are there for. Anyways, I've been meaning to pick up Salt Slow by Julia Armfield ever since I read Our Wives Under the Sea, and I really loved it. I had more complicated thoughts on Private Rites. I thought it started really strong, but it sort of deflated halfway through and definitely didn't stick the landing. However, that made me feel that the short form would be ideal for Julia Armfield's sort of strange, uncanny, weird eeriness that's also quite queer and quite um I don't know how to explain this, but like exploring this one theme or this one sort of emotion, whether it be on one character or in relationships between people. And I was not wrong. These stories are so good. Some of them bend more surrealist, I would say. Some of them are more magical realism. But regardless of genre, you know, they are weird fiction. And they are most of them, I wanted to say all of them, so good. There were a couple where I was like, that's fine. But most of them, at least 90% of them, are brilliant, so I urge you to pick this up now. It's really good. Although technically that is not a book I previously owned, I still think it really counts for my 5 short story collections because I've been meaning to read it for so long. And actually, the reason I never bought it, and this is something I think that will come up the entire year, is that when I go to indie bookshops especially, I'm often wanting to be surprised and wanting to get something that I discover there, and that's what usually happens because it's good curation. But then that what happens there is that like I have all these books that are great and they're surprises, but then that I wasn't planning on getting, and then I never do buy the books that I do want to read as well because I say to myself, "Oh, I can find them whenever." But yeah, I really want to not change that habit, but find a better balance between, okay, now I'm going to read this book. I'm going to pick it up and read it right away because it's a book that I've been meaning to read for a long time. If that makes sense. Anyways, the library is helpful for that for me. Because if I really do love the book afterwards, I can always get it secondhand or something, which I do think I would want to get Salt Slow eventually. So that's great. I discovered this book years ago actually at the bookshop I used to work, but then I re-encountered it at an amazing bookshop called Books on the Hill. It's in St. Albans, and if you haven't been and you fancy a day trip, obviously if you live in London, but yeah, if you're in St. Albans for any reason, just go to Books on the Hill. It's so good. The selection is impeccable. They have really, it's not strange per se, but they have unusual left field choices, even in their classic section. So interesting. And I was also really happy to see loads of queer books, not just in the queer section, but also throughout the shop. So that was also really nice to see. And a lot of trans books specifically. So that was just so heartwarming. Anyways, but yeah, I found this book there. It's called A Horse at Night on Writing by Amina Cain. And I devoured it. I literally read it in one day because it was so good. I miss I forgot to text my friend that I went to visit that I was back because I was so engrossed in the book. And then also I missed a tube stop and had to go back because I was so engrossed in it. Like I talked to this book so much. Like I didn't tab it as much because I was too busy writing on it. And I don't know if it shows on camera that much, but like there are parts where I literally just wrote a bunch. This is not quite a collection of essays. The blurb says essayistic inquiries. I would definitely say a book length essay or just like a nonfiction book about it's literary criticism. It's superb, so fresh, but yet so sort of meat and potatoes type of literary criticism, literally just analyzing books and films for their sort of abstract and aesthetic choices and how they reflect experience. So it would be a really good example to show, for example, a first or second year of creative writing or literary criticism if someone's studying like comp lit or just English, I guess. But yeah, it's so good, but also it feels really fresh because there is a very omnivorous bent to the text she's drawing from. Especially, it's also quite, yeah, it cites Borges, it cites even Anne Radcliffe at some point, but it also dives into Ferrante and Cusk, and so it feels that this is a writer in the now, writing about now, which is really refreshing. And yeah, she's just thinking about writing and why does she write and how does she write the things that she wants to write from an effective aesthetic perspective. And it was so good. And that sounds that it would be pretentious, but it's actually not. It's so easy to read in many ways, but it's so interesting that I actually did sort of stop and reread some of the sentences over and over. So I would be really surprised if this didn't make my top 10 of next year. Well, I guess this year, but I make the list the following year. So yeah, so I got that on Books on the Hill. So let's move to the other book that I got on Books on the Hill, which I haven't read yet, sorry. Parentheses. Standing up to film is so good for me because obviously I'm a very fidgety person. I am big gestures, big energy, which I try to not contain per se, but I try to channel better for this channel and for generally like when I teach, when I do public speaking, it's a lot about channeling, right? Performance, all of that. But yeah, I feel like now I really need to remember to do that so you don't see the mirror. Anyways, let's go to. Sorry. No, okay. Well, never mind. Let's go to other books that I. Let's go to other books that I purchased or have received. You'll see. How can I put this? There are more books in my acquired pile than days of the year, but I haven't bought all of them. So I think that's something. So the other book that I got on Books on the Hill was Susan Faludi's In the Dark Room, which was the Pulitzer Prize finalist for 2017. And this is what I mean. Like, what kind of small independent bookshop in St. Albans has this? For what reason? I mean, obviously, I'm really excited. But, okay, so basically, in 2004, I'm just reading this because I think it can summarize it better than I could. Writer Susan Faludi set out to investigate someone she scarcely knew, her estranged father. Stephen Faludi had lived many lives: suburban dad, alpine mountaineer, swashbuckling adventurer in the Amazon, Jewish fugitive in Holocaust Budapest, living in Hungary after sex reassignment surgery and identifying as, quote-unquote, a complete woman now. How was this new parent connected to the silent and ultimately violent father who had built his career on the alteration of images? Faludi's struggle to come to grips with her father's metamorphosis takes her across borders, historical, political, religious, sexual, and brings her face to face with the question of the age. Is identity something you choose, or is it the very thing you cannot escape? Doesn't it sound so good? I can't believe it. It's like technically a trans book, but it's also sort of family investigation, it's journalism. It just sounds so good. And then this was actually the first book that I acquired, but I got it at a book exchange. So, this is Svetlana Alexievich's Last Witnesses and Childlike Stories, which is translated from the Russian by, Richard Paver and Larissa Volokhonsky. Interesting. They are the obviously famous husband-wife duo where it's like she translates very literally from Russian and then he zhuzhes it up into English. So I'm really curious. I haven't read any Svetlana Alexievich before, but it's high time I changed that. I got the new two new cipher books. These came out last year. Mattilda Bernstein's Sycamore Pterodactyls, which Pterodactyl. I don't know. I ruined the possessives there. Anyways, this is raised by boisterous lesbian mothers in Seattle. Pterodactyl comes of age as a trans girl in the 1980s in a world of dancing queens and late-night house parties, just as the AIDS crisis ravages the world. So it's about, New York City club culture and being trans in the 80s, all great things. This is so funny because a friend's boyfriend back in Chile is a translator, and he was telling me how obsessed he is with this book. Apropos of nothing, we were just like talking. Oh, because he translated Cookie Miller, who I definitely need to read as well, into Spanish, and it came out last year. And so he was telling me about how interested he is in this sort of scene. So very, very excited about that one. And then I also have Davey Davis's second book, Casanova 20 or Hot World. Well, actually, I don't know if it's his actual second book, but I own the first one. I still haven't read it, but I'm really excited about this one. So I think I might start with this one. Not that the other one I don't want to read. It's called X, but this just looks so up my alley because it says a novel about art, desire, and mortality. Casanova 20 or Hot World follows a young man isolated by his extraordinary beauty and his strange friendship with an older painter. I'm excited. And I also love that it says a heterosexual novel. Like, how can you not want to read that? In St. Albans as well, they've got an amazing Oxfam bookshop, which, if already a small town has an Oxfam bookshop, you already know it's going to be quite a literary town, right? But yeah, this one is one of the best ones I've ever been to. I can't walk in without buying something. Then the prices are not bad as well. I constantly have to pick up stuff and then put them down because, again, I'm really trying to stick to my goal. So if I start buying like all the books that I want to read just because they're cheap, we're not going to get anywhere. Like, I am a fast reader, but there are limits. And also I don't want to be like flying through books. I like to take my time and interact with them. Anyways, just blubbering at this point. But we're almost at the end of the video, I promise. Okay, so first we have The Temple of the Golden Pavilion. £4. This like new Everyman edition, £4. And I already own this. I haven't read it though, which is why I bought it. Because the reason I haven't read it is because I had this vintage Red Spine edition, which I like, but sometimes they go like puffy, the like bolden text, and I hate that. Now I'm really careful, like now, because I have so much choice, if I see it and I see it's like that, I don't get it. But I think I got that book at a time where I was just ordering off of Book Depository, rest in peace. So I just didn't, it was the cheapest edition. But this one was even cheaper than that because was £4 and it's a beautiful Everyman edition. Like, look at this, look at this. It was translated by Ivan Morris and introduced by Donald Cain, who I think I've said on this channel before is one of my favorite Japanese scholars. So yeah, very exciting stuff. And I will be getting rid of the other copy that I have in Chile. And finally, I finally got myself a copy of The Wind in the Willows, which I never read as a kid. I really, really want to. Also because everyone says I'm quite, not today, but generally I dress quite Wind in the Willows coded. And there's also like a sense of, ooh, let's embark on a little adventure that apparently people think is quite me. So yeah, this is about Mole going boating with the water rat instead of spring cleaning. It's very exciting, loads of adventures, but then I'm at a part where he's starting to feel the call of home, and it's just a very interesting thing to me to read about the idea of home and what home is, obviously. I'm really enjoying it. The writing obviously is really good. It's for children, but it's a classic, so I'm really enjoying the language. And I will say a bit more next week because I'll definitely have finished it by. But this moves us nicely into my currently reading, for which I have 3 more books to show you. First, I'm buddy reading A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, and this is so good. I'll just summarize it really quickly. Basically, there is this woman, Ruth, who's recently moved to an island to live with her partner. Not that recently, but that's sort of the setup. We still get the sense that this is quite new and she's adjusting still, or maybe she didn't think it would be so hard to adjust at the beginning, and now some cracks are starting to emerge, and that's one of the parts. And then there's also a diary that's being written and addressed to the reader by a Japanese girl, and these two are connected. And I don't really want to say more, although I probably will have to in my review. We'll see. But it's one part a week, so I've already done part 1. So 3 weeks later, you'll get this in my wrap up. I'll definitely have more to say once I finish it. I started my first Mary McCarthy, The Company She Keeps, and this is going okay. So this is a personal preference. I don't love episodic narratives that much. A la, I don't know, Mr. Norris's Changes Trains by Christopher Isherwood, or even Saul Bellows books. Sometimes I do, like for example, Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. But then again, you're just following one character there. This you kind of are. So basically, this starts with this woman who has a lover and decides to nuke her relationship, her marriage, and then also breaks it off with the young man because she realizes she didn't want either of them. So then she moves on to New York to work at a gallery and meets this very extravagant owner who is a bit shady, and the plot sort of advances. But there's no real plot. She's just vibing there. It's very vibes based. And I can do obviously vibes based. Some of my favorite books are books where quote unquote nothing happens, but then that needs to be paired with really solid writing and big introspection, and I don't know if I'm getting that. On the other hand, there are bits of this that are brilliant. I think it is a worthwhile book, but I might not be obsessed with it just because it's not my type of narrative. In some ways, in some others it is. I don't know. We'll see. The thing is, I put it down and now I'm like, do I really want to pick it back up? I think if I DNF it, it would be a case of I might pick it up at a later date, but still I don't want it to be sort of pending, especially because it's a library book, so I'll have to give it back soon. We'll see. That's all that I have to show you today. This was definitely longer than I expected, but at the same time, I think it's appropriately chaotic. It is on my channel name after all. I want to try to bang these out every week and feel like, okay, this is a little conversation. It's quite chill. You know what I mean? So hopefully that comes across and you like this format. This weekend I have my stag do. Exciting. It's going to be a chill pub affair, but I'm really excited because also I'll get to see friends that I don't get to see that often. And then I'm getting married next week. It's so exciting. So scary, but so exciting. I honestly think the most exciting bit is the afterwards, going on a mini moon. And it's not because I'm not excited about the ceremony aspect, but because of our situation, it's going to be a really, really small affair. And also, there are lots of minutiae about the documents, which I think makes us both a little nervous. We have done a lot of research and asked a lot of questions to ensure everything goes smoothly. But obviously, I'm Latin American and all my paperwork looks very different. And I just think it's a very interesting thing when you're trying to do sort of international paperwork. I had a little bit of this as well when I changed my name and my gender markers. But yeah, really makes you think about systems and structures and how they are designed to be inviting to some formats and not others. And it's just been really interesting. But beyond all of that, I am just excited to be married to the woman I love. Next week, there'll be a whole other background. So be prepared for that. And that's it. See you next time. Hope your reading has been good so far. Tell me what you've been reading.